Ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the TemTeam Cup May Edition. I'm Quarter, and here we have another Group D match coming straight at us. We see Sryzen, who has brought absolute, flaming aggression into this sort of group stage, one of the most aggressive teams in Group D, versus Wiki Kernel. I think one of the shining stars of fellow Tamers. We've had a lot of fellow Tamers players play around inside this tournament, and Wiki Kernel has gotten results. Now, that said, last week, this was a matchup that really didn't favor them. My question is, will this week be different? We'll just be waiting a little bit for them to get in. It looks like we still just have a small amount of time before they actually start inviting each other, but it shouldn't take that long before we get in. Now, once again, quick honorable mention to the fact that all of fellow Tamers last week ran Kinu Golzi. I don't know whether that's going to be the same this week, but I look forward to the same sort of fervor and drive out of them in their desire to innovate. We saw SM Fid recently rock some really cool things in the form of intimidation and a couple of the fun moves like that. So I hope to see something similar out of Wiki Kernel. Definitely an absolute firebrand in this particular group. Took some games off of both Nekoblocky and Tsubaki. Definitely some fiery stuff. And with that, it looks like they are inviting each other. They are in. Let's see what's going on. So, looking at this, we do actually see Wiki Kernel has swapped things up a bit. We see a Hedgen in there alongside a Fire Koish and a Mimit. That's definitely a lot more aggression out of that side. Looks like the aggro is spreading into Group D. Now, we've seen Sryzen's team before. We know the Sinner type Chromion is truly a monster, alongside, of course, the Mimit and the Hedgen for a lot of separate synergy options. We see the Ragnet, we see the Mashuk, leading to some very strong combinations there. We see the Hedgen ban right out from Wiki Kernel, and the Yowler ban on the side of Sryzen. Both seem pretty reasonable. Yowler, while you can deal with it, if you don't have anything that is specifically mental on your team, it can be a lot harder to. If you don't have sparks, it can be a lot harder to. I can understand Sryzen, with their current setup, not really wanting to pick that fight. So we do see Fire Koish as a first pick out of Sryzen. This leaves a lot of things open, honestly. Yeah, you can pick oh god. Now, while I say it leaves a lot open, double Mashuk is about as closed off as Wiki Kernel can make this opener, as, yeah, there's very little that Koish can actually do into that. Maybe we can see... Ragnet still feels good here. We actually see the Chromion. This is interesting. So that makes sense in terms of just getting your, harmful microwaves out, but the problem is the Mimit is still available for Wiki Kernel to ban if he so chooses here, and I don't see a lot that's stopping him from just going for that. Now, he is eyeballing the Mashuk instead, but that would leave the Mimit open. Granted, Mimit's in the wrong slot for it to properly copy and give harmful microwave synergy, so we do see the Mashuk ban regardless. That's still pretty reasonable, honestly. You've got a Kinu that you gotta worry about, you got Fire Koish, but there's a lot else there that I'm like, does it really wall you? Maybe Wiki Kernel really wants to lean on that Valish, which did win a lot in previous games. We do see the Kinu ban out from Sryzen, always a strong one into mid-range compositions that want those defensive buffs against aggressive teams. Definitely something we like to see here. We see the tried and true Valish Koish combo in the back, as kind of expected from our bans. We see Osiara Mimit Valish picked up from Sryzen's sides. This is just like all in your face, all punching you, all around the clock. If I recall correctly, he's got a particularly no-holds-barred Valish to boot, and we see Golzi as our last pick out from Wiki Kernel. This is going to be some pretty exciting stuff. Going into our first match. Right, so... as I alluded to in draft, double Mashuk is kind of a problem for Sryzen here. You can deal with it, but it is deeply concerning in terms of how you're going to deal with it. It's basically all on Chromion, and if Chromion's taking a double Wastewater this turn, that's going to be pretty nightmarish for it to continue eating. Alternately, a perfect jab Wastewater. If these Mimits, if the Mimit Mashuk is appropriately speed tiered and Wiki Kernel knows which one's going first, they're not speed tied or something like that, it shouldn't be too hard for him to get a minus defense debuff onto this Chromion and then Wastewater it into oblivion. I don't know what Sryzen does to wall that or deal with that, because the problem is Rosowski is basically their only other lifeline here in terms of messing things up. And we do see Rosowski hit the field as our Mimit, charming as it may be, becomes yet another Mashuk. That is something. We do see the wastewater. Oh my goodness. Okay, yeah. I don't think we're going to need to see any P-jabs here as the Chromion is down before it is even allowed to move. The awkward positioning of our Mimit and our Chromion there, just meaning that one of the best options that Sryzen had into this lineup is just immediately just not there. So that was definitely a powerful play out of Wiki Kernel, knowing that they outsped there, making sure that they were in a position where they were just able to push into that slot. Because now the problem is, what's stopping them from pushing into that slot again, right? Even if that's bait, like, Valish is the only thing that swaps into that, and we see a cage come down, just ensuring that that Valish cannot come in to try to take this damage. We see the perfect jab come down onto the Mimit, which is at least something. The P-jab Ketsa will be coming in there, and it's gonna do a significant amount to it, but is it going to be enough? The wastewater comes down like a mighty force, managing another KO on Wiki Kernel's side. He is out for blood, just chewing through Sryzen's front line here. Valish does hit the field. Is this too late? Because now you're looking at, what, 2 uppercuts to the face? And both are getting tireless buffs off. Like, that's pretty nightmarish. We do see that Speed Arrow is on Rosowski, is on Sryzen's side. The P-jab comes down onto the other Mashuk. Our base jump does have, base jump happening. As uppercut is just smashing into Valish alongside everything else. Yeah, no, this double tireless Mashuk lead has been just a nightmare for him to try to overcome. As even on a resisted Mimit Shook hit, it's still doing way too much damage. So the OCRI hits the field, and at this point, right, like, fortunately you can take out one of these with priority if you so choose, but, man, that's so much you have to take back now with 2 Tems versus 3 entirely healthy Tems in the back line that Wiki Kernel still has. This looks like it very quickly spiraled out of Sryzen's control, not being able to respond to a very dominating opener that just kept going. Really frightening to see. So we can obviously still see, like... Okay, so we see the uppercut go down. It does not get the KO on the Mimit, but we do see the Tsunami happen instead, guaranteeing the double KO for less potential stamina invest. That is a good way to go for this. We could still see a bit of a turnaround here, but I'm gonna keep saying this is a lot for Sryzen to try to overcome with 2 Tems left. We got Golzi, Koish, and Valish still staring this down, and Valish and Golzi are perfectly happy to come in here. So, at this point, like, OCR can drop a fat Aquatic Whirlwind on one of these slots. That's still something that's very available for it. Serbatio's Wrath is obviously something you could go for, but I don't know if you actually commit to that when you're facing a lot of this priority sort of attacks coming down from Wiki Kernel, and that's precisely what happens as we see the Crystal Spikes land in on that. The Wastewater comes down on the Golzi. It looks like we are trying to see a Serbatio's Wrath to try to confirm even more kills and try to set this OCR up incidentally. Given the fact that it did Tsunami last turn and serves this turn, it still has not overexerted, so it's still able to continue exerting pressure, but the Scavenger is going to get that Valish back up there. So now we have Fire Koish and Valish, a tried and true combo that is more than capable of tearing through parts of this lineup against Sryzen's board state, which is just looking a bit risky there. Now, we do see the Aquatic come down. That's gonna probably take down this Valish is the main thing, though. And it does! Sryzen does look like they're gonna be able to take it back due to the fact that they outsped there with the priority, even after the very painful overexertion. That's gonna be enough. The Wastewater outspeeds as well, thanks to the absence of synergy, and they pull it back from the brink. An absolute turnabout in that end game. Wiki Kernel's backline not able to put up with what we saw from that. Very interesting to see. Well, we're going to go ahead and give our players just a hot minute to ready up for their next match. Wiki Kernel I really thought they had a strong chance in terms of a lot of what they had going there. That double Mashuk opener felt so hard for Sryzen, but the moment that went down, they just curb stomped them. It was like just rolling over the rest of Wiki Kernel's team with that OCR. It just goes to show you not to underestimate the horse, despite the fact that it's frail, despite the fact that it goes down easy. You still have to respect it, and you still have to like pay attention to it. Otherwise, it is just going to go ahead and stomp over your back line. Now granted, stealing the Tireless Shook was the other really strong thing that Sryzen did there. That was really important. But, yeah, the combination of those really turned that game around. Very impressive. Alright, we're just gonna wait for both of our opponents to face each other again. So that is 1 win for Sryzen. This means that if they get another win here, that is 3 points to them for this particular round, or at least matchup. If Wiki Kernel wins the next match, then we will see instead a like split of 1 point for each of our contestants here. That's how this goes. And it looks like we are just about ready to get in again. My question is, right, I do feel like banning out the Hedgen was a very strong thing for Wiki Kernel. The question is that second ban really what they want to go for? And do they potentially want to lead Kinu, given the fact that they really got messed up by Mashuk there? And if they're not bringing their own hedge in, they have to have other responses to it. Obviously, the OCR was the other big problem there. Golzy, while a very strong TemTeam, is not necessarily your best answer to OCR. Well, here we are. We're into our second game. Let's go. And with this, we are getting into our second of our best of 2 here. Wiki Kernel up against Sryzen. Immediately, we see the Hedgen ban once again. And looking at Wiki Kernel's lineup, what precisely are we going to expect to see banned? Honestly, I still respect the Yaller ban. It was pretty strong out of Sryzen. It meant that Wiki Kernel didn't have the same stodge to try to withstand things like the OCR inside that. But there's a lot of options here. I still feel like the Kinu ban just at the start might even be better. But no, we do see the Yaller just immediately hits the ban board. Big ol' red X right there. Meaning that we do actually see Wiki Kernel pick up the Tireless Mashuk again on blue sides. This does leave them open to the counter pick, but it does mean that Sryzen is able to get their teammates in the order that he wants them to be. This is double Nature Chromion. It's going to be harder for Wiki Kernel to deal with, but what are they going to bring out that potentially stymies this? And the answer is Fire Koish. Yeah, Fire Koish will do it. Combination of that into, like, I don't know, Valish in the back will still be a real nightmare for Sryzen to try to beat with this opener. Now, nothing stopping them repositioning, of course, but, you know, it's still kind of a problem. So, going into our second bans, I kind of expect the Kinu ban again from Sryzen. It felt really good banning that out second, given that Wiki Kernel's been going for these aggressive openers. But no, the Valish ban is what we see instead. This obviously makes sense. It denies synergy to the Synergy Master Firekoish for the Quetzaleno. Very important to see there. And it does mean that now Wiki Kernel, like, wants to pick up the Hedgen again to try to deal with this opener, meaning it could be vulnerable to a double microwaves if it's going into the Mashuk spot, which is where we're likely to see a double microwaves is the problem. So almost immediately we see a Firequake Mashuk picked up on Sryzen's side. We see Kinu Mimit picked up on Wiki Kernel's side as the last few picks. We certainly have a lot of options this game. My question is, how favorable is this going to be as a matchup for Wiki Kernel in comparison to the last one? It felt like he really had the last game by the horns, and just at the last minute, Sryzen proved their worth as they, like, turned the game around. This time, Sryzen is at an undeniable better position inside this opener, putting Wiki Kernel in a situation where I think they kind of have to respect this double in. Because if they don't, like, they don't have any free prio to effectively deal with this. So, looking at this, we obviously still have a bunch of swap-ins for this. Okay, Kinu feels terrible here. We do actually see him just stay in, and the harmful microwaves with Sinner Typer just wipes it out in a single blow. I feel like that was not respected at all. The Quetzaleno goes down there as the wastewater was obviously the other thing that wanted to go into that. We do see a one-to-one trade, one Mashuk for one Chromion, but oh my goodness. That was definitely, like, I don't know whether Wiki Kernel expected the outspeed or whether they were just, like, expecting it to not take them down, but no, that microwaves hit like an actual freight train. We see the Hedgen hit the board, we see Ragnet hit the board, certainly something that's frightening for both of Wiki Kernel's Tems now that it's here, and yeah. Something to be concerned about is how you're going to deal with this Ragnet now that this Mashuk's out, because it's one of your best things for properly attending to that. Electro Punch is going to come down like a pile of bricks. We still have the threat of Cinder Typer Chromion in the corner there. It doesn't have its Cinder Typer anymore, but it does still have a Resin Trap, which will be more than enough to really concern this Fire Coach, which is only at half health. I almost like seeing the Mimit swap here on the Hedgen side, but we don't see it. We see a hologram come out from the Chromion as the Plasma Beam comes down on it and whiffs. The Hypnosis lands onto the Ragnet. That is a way to deal with it. It is very slow, and almost no one is running Sleep Control at the moment, despite the fact that Koish is such a terror and is running around most aggressive teams these days. We do still have the opportunity for Wiki Kernel to use their Mimit aggressively here and try to steal the Ragnet from Sryzen. I do feel like that is a good path for them to try to go down. Obviously, that's still very strong into a lot of what Sryzen still has. It's pretty reasonable to look at. It also means that you can, like, get a Charge Iron Filings off. If nothing else, scout this Ragnet, because Ragnet has enough move slot syndrome. It's genuinely worth trying to make sure that you, like, swipe it if you get the chance. So we do see, in fact, the Mimit land on the other side instead, transforming into another Hedgen, as we see a Hellfire turn get set up here. The hacked microchip, however, is available, and the Nature Torrent wakes up the Ragnet, which goes for the Electro Punch, wiping out the Hedgen. Very strong plays from Sryzen today, making sure to use their Tems effectively in order to maintain tempo even into sleep turns. These things not being respected effectively by Wiki Kernel. Very powerful stuff. So at this point, we're kind of seeing, this is a bit more back and forth than the previous game, but honestly, it feels like it's very quick, very swiftly tilting into Sryzen's favor. I don't see, now that the Mimit is a Hedgen and in the wrong slot, what Wiki Kernel can do to try to contain this Ragnet, which trades absurdly well into the rest of his team. We see the Hellfire come down, and it does look like that's not Drill. Okay, so obviously this is of course it isn't Drill, it's the Doppelganger Brooch Mimit, but we see the Quetzalania landed there as well, alongside the Synergy Master, Hellfire. Definitely some powerful stuff that we wind up seeing from that. It does wind up taking down the Ragnet, which is really important. The fact that the Mimit managed to live that Electro Punch as well is very cool to see. But now we've got this Fire Koish untouched in the back from Sryzen. We still only, like, the only thing that we have left that's untouched on Wiki Kernel's side is a Kinu, which, definitely a spooky thing, like, for Wiki Kernel to deal with here in terms of how much aggression is being levied against him. If this is like a fast Kinu with a gun style Kinu, which has, like, I don't know, really high speed and special attack, maybe it can manage to take this back, being able to, like, 1v1 the Mashuk. But people's Mashuks, as we've been seeing today, are very fast and very frail. Like, generally, you expect them to try to just take you down. The holograms getting work out of the Chromion, just all those separate sources of evade, keeping our boy safe. As the Hedgen Doppel goes down, the Koish outspeeding Wiki Kernel's Koish, even with Wiki Kernel having Speed Arrow once again, just massively important there. We may have seen the Hypno go down, but we've seen the fact that Nature Torrent is more than capable of taking care of that before. It's a reasonable, like, neutral prio option for Chromion, and it's not going to be taking down this Koish to an unreasonable level. Wiki Kernel has to respect this, but I don't know if they have any other way to respond. We see the Beta Burst does outspeed the Chromion, though, and if that takes it down, that is going to be a bit more safety for Wiki Kernel here as we go into this very tense late game. So, what's left on Sryzen? Oh, that's right, it's the Tireless Mashuk. A lot of this, I feel, just comes down to speed again. If this Kinu outspeeds the rest of this board and gets a juicy Beta Burst into Mashuk, that's going to do a lot for Wiki Kernel here. The problem is, Wiki Kernel's Fire Koish is only at 30% HP, and in the meantime, Sryzen's got full bars on both of his Tems. This is gonna be a massive thing to outdo, but he does outspeed, and he does over 50% to the Mashuk. The reactive vial, however, procs. Sryzen showing tech after tech after tech. Some really interesting things. The water cannon with synergy successfully taking down the Fire Koish, as it's looking like Wiki Kernel is going to be losing this second game unless he pulls out a miracle out of his hat. Akinu alone does not face down a Fire Koish and live. And sadly, with the reactive vial, it looks like Sryzen was just prepared for those hits onto Mashuk. Very interesting to see. I'm trying to see any way for him to get out of this, but I just don't see it. We see him just, attempt to die a valiant warrior as he hypnos the Koish, trying to get a bit more time for himself. He doesn't overexert for that either, which is very impressive to see. So, at this point, I'm pretty sure Mashuk just, wastewaters, because the Beta Burst isn't going to do nearly as much now that it's not super effective. The overexertion happens there, and the wastewater comes down like a mighty force, eliminating Wiki Kernel from this game. Congratulations and well played to Sryzen. Obviously, once again, I would like to congratulate both of our players here. Wiki Kernel did still bring some really cool things inside that match, and I just feel like Sryzen just played that set incredibly solidly. Like, all the way through that, it was just like, good reads into a lot of separate bits. And then, it was just a lot of really powerful stuff. The turn where he woke up the Ragnet was really good plays, making sure on an electric weak board that you forced them to actually respect it. The fact that then after that you had the reactive vial on Mashuk. That was another one that caught me off guard. You usually see the reactive vial on things that are potentially just not that. In terms of more what are considered to be hard carries, your Nagais, things like that. But with none of that on the team, it was really interesting to see. Now, I'm going to go ahead and start signing off here. We do not have any more matches in the foreseeable future, but we will have in roughly, I believe, 11 hours or so, J-Dragon versus Luke Leal in what is our slot number 31. I'll be happy to show you that game when we get to it, but in the meantime, I'd like to thank you all for stopping by. Any attention that you guys wind up paying this fantastic tournament is really appreciated, and I'd like to wish all of you a really lovely day. I've been Quarter. Have a good one.